What if Atlantis was never a fairy tale that sank by accident, but a real civilization that vanished so completely it erased itself from history? For thousands of years, we've repeated Plato's account like a final answer. A powerful island beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, advanced canals, towering structures, and a city swallowed in a single day. But here's the problem. There are no ruins, no artifacts, no undeniable trace. So where did it go? What if the truth isn't buried under sand or hidden beneath waves, but locked behind missing evidence, suppressed records, and locations we haven't looked at the right way? What if everything we've been told about the lost city of Atlantis is wrong? Imagine a once thriving civilization, rich with knowledge and culture, vanishing without a trace, its very existence questioned by the passage of time. For thousands of years, the myth of Atlantis has gripped the imagination of scholars, historians, and dreamers alike, its story of grandeur and sudden destruction echoing through the annals of history. Yet, despite its prominence in ancient texts, there is no concrete evidence that Atlantis ever existed. It is a story we've been told, a legend passed down from one generation to the next. Yet the truth remains as elusive as the city itself. In this video, we will not merely explore the tale of Atlantis, but challenge everything we think we know about it. We'll uncover new theories that suggest Atlantis' disappearance may not have been an accident or myth at all. Could it be that Atlantis was real, and that its sudden vanishing was a part of something much larger than we've imagined? A mystery far deeper than a single city lost to the ocean. The story of Atlantis begins with one of the most famous accounts in ancient literature. Plato, the philosopher, introduced the world to this enigmatic civilization in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful island nation located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. The city was said to be a marvel of advanced engineering and culture, its inhabitants enjoying a society of unparalleled wealth and knowledge. The island was larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, an enormous landmass that flourished with technological innovation, towering structures, and a complex system of governance. It was a utopia, a paradise on Earth, where everything seemed to be in harmony. But this golden age was not to last. Plato described how the Atlanteans became increasingly corrupt over time, their once pure society succumbing to greed and the lust for power. Their moral decline angered the gods, and, as punishment, Atlantis was submerged in a cataclysmic event, disappearing into the depths of the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. Plato's tale is compelling, and it has shaped much of what we know, or think we know, about Atlantis. Yet there are problems. Despite Plato's detailed account, there is no physical evidence to support the existence of this great civilization. Archaeologists, geologists, and historians have scoured the earth for centuries, yet no trace of Atlantis has ever been found. No ruins, no artifacts, no signs of the grand city that Plato described so vividly. Some argue that Atlantis is nothing more than a myth, a cautionary tale told by Plato to illustrate the dangers of hubris and moral corruption. But for many, the idea that such a grand civilization could simply disappear without leaving a single trace seems implausible. Could there be more to this story than we've been told? Could Atlantis have been real? And could its disappearance have been more than just a natural disaster? What if the disappearance of Atlantis wasn't an accident at all? What if it was part of something much more mysterious and profound? This idea is at the heart of several new theories that challenge the conventional understanding of Atlantis. Some have speculated that the city's destruction wasn't a mere consequence of natural forces, but was deliberately orchestrated, either by the gods, by rival civilizations, or perhaps even by the Atlanteans themselves. What if the city was intentionally hidden, its knowledge and power suppressed for reasons we may never fully understand? These are the questions that drive the investigation into Atlantis today. They are the questions that keep the mystery alive, fueling the curiosity of those who seek to uncover the truth. The story of Atlantis has always been shrouded in mystery, and yet it is one of the most persistent myths in human history. Its legacy lives on in countless cultures, from the ancient Egyptians to the Mayans, each of whom has their own version of a lost civilization. The ancient Greeks, the Egyptians, and even the Sumerians all have myths that echo the tale of a once great civilization lost to the sea. But what is the source of these stories? Are they merely folklore passed down through generations, or could they be fragments of a collective memory of an ancient civilization that truly existed? The idea that Atlantis was not merely a figment of imagination, but a real place is a tantalizing thought. It opens up the possibility that there may be more to our history than we currently understand, that ancient civilizations were more advanced than we've been led to believe. As we look closer at the accounts of Atlantis, we begin to see inconsistencies and contradictions that make us question the veracity of Plato's story. While Plato's writings are often taken as gospel, there are those who believe that his descriptions of Atlantis were not meant to be taken literally. They argue that Plato may have been using Atlantis as a metaphor, a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and decadence. After all, Plato was known for his use of allegory, and many of his works contain deeper meanings beneath the surface. Could it be that the story of Atlantis is not a historical account, but a symbolic narrative designed to warn future generations of the consequences of moral and societal decay? Despite these contradictions, the idea of Atlantis has persisted, and the search for the lost city continues to this day. Countless theories have been proposed, each one attempting to explain where Atlantis might be located and what caused its downfall. Some have suggested that Atlantis lies beneath the waters of the Mediterranean, while others believe it may be buried in the sands of the Sahara Desert. There are those who claim that Atlantis is hidden in the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, and still others argue that the city's ruins are submerged deep beneath the ocean, waiting to be discovered by the right expedition. These theories vary widely, but they all share one common thread: the belief that Atlantis is out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. What is it that drives so many people to search for Atlantis? What is it about this story that captivates our collective imagination? Perhaps it is the mystery itself, the idea that there is something hidden just beyond our reach, something that could change everything we know about history and our place in the world. Atlantis represents more than just a lost city. It is a symbol of the unknown, of the tantalizing possibility that there are secrets buried beneath the surface of our world, waiting to be uncovered. It is a reminder that there is still so much we don't understand, so much we have yet to discover. The search for Atlantis is more than just an intellectual exercise. It is a quest for something deeper, something more profound. It is a search for meaning, for purpose, for a connection to something greater than ourselves. Atlantis, with its mystery and allure, taps into a fundamental human desire to uncover the unknown, to uncover the lost chapters of our shared history. It is a journey that transcends time, a search that has continued for centuries and will likely continue for centuries to come. But as we embark on this journey, we must ask ourselves, what are we really searching for? Are we looking for proof that Atlantis existed? Or are we searching for something more? Are we trying to uncover the lost secrets of a forgotten civilization? Or are we trying to find answers to questions that have plagued humanity for millennia? Perhaps the answer lies not in the city itself, but in the search itself, in the journey of discovery, in the process of questioning and exploring the unknown. In the end, the mystery of Atlantis may never be fully solved. Perhaps the truth is lost to the sands of time, buried beneath the waves of the ocean, or hidden in the forgotten corners of history. But even if we never find the city itself, the search for Atlantis will continue to inspire and fascinate us, for it is a journey that speaks to something deep within us all, a longing for discovery, for understanding, and for the truth that lies beyond the horizon. As long as the echoes of Atlantis continue to reverberate through the corridors of time, the mystery will endure and the quest for answers will persist. And perhaps, in the search for Atlantis, we are not only uncovering the secrets of an ancient civilization, but also discovering something about ourselves. The story of Atlantis, as it has come down to us through the ages, is largely built upon the writings of the philosopher Plato. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, he paints a vivid picture of a civilization so advanced that it seemed almost otherworldly. According to Plato, Atlantis was a vast island, home to a great and powerful people who thrived long before the rise of ancient Greece. The island, he tells us, was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a place of incredible wealth and technological marvels, where the people enjoyed a life of ease, harmony, and plenty. The city was described as being larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, a sprawling metropolis filled with beautiful temples, majestic buildings, and a complex system of canals that kept the island cities interconnected. It was a utopia, a shining beacon of human achievement, where peace and prosperity ruled, and the people were governed by wise and just leaders. At the heart of this great civilization lay the capital city, Atlantis itself, an extraordinary urban center built upon a series of concentric rings of land and water. The city was surrounded by enormous walls, adorned with gleaming metals, such as orichalcum, a mythical substance described by Plato as being more precious than gold. The people of Atlantis, according to Plato, had mastered the art of engineering, creating vast infrastructure that stretched across the island. They harnessed the power of nature to build magnificent structures and manage their environment, creating a society where wealth and knowledge flowed as freely as the waters that surrounded their city. But Atlantis was not just a place of material wealth. It was also a center of spiritual power. The gods themselves were said to have played a direct role in the creation of Atlantis, bestowing upon the island a unique and sacred connection to the divine. According to Plato, the founder of Atlantis was the god Poseidon, who fathered the first rulers of the city. Poseidon's love for the mortal woman Cleito and their subsequent children was said to be the origin of the Atlantean royal line. The rulers of Atlantis were divinely appointed, and their civilization was thought to be a reflection of the harmony between the gods and the earth. The city was a sacred space, a place where the divine and the human came together in a perfect balance. For a time, this society flourished, with its people enjoying the fruits of their labor and living in peace and prosperity. However, as Plato's tale unfolds, a darker side of Atlantis begins to emerge. Over time, the people of Atlantis became increasingly corrupt. The once virtuous rulers began to succumb to their own desires for power, wealth, and control. Their society, which had been built upon harmony and spiritual principles, began to fracture. Greed and hubris took root among the leaders, and they began to expand their empire, conquering neighboring lands and subjugating other civilizations. The mighty Atlanteans, who had once been revered for their wisdom and ingenuity, became consumed by their own arrogance, forgetting the balance that had allowed their civilization to thrive. Plato tells us that this moral decay was noticed by the gods. In his work, the gods play a crucial role in the fate of Atlantis. The gods, in their wisdom, saw that Atlantis had fallen into a state of imbalance, and as a result, they decided to punish the Atlanteans. The destruction of Atlantis is described as a divine retribution, a cataclysmic event that would wipe the island off the map in a single day and night. Plato writes that the entire island of Atlantis was submerged beneath the sea, its once great cities and sprawling landscapes disappearing into the depths of the ocean. This, Plato suggests, was the end of Atlantis, the fall of a civilization that had grown too proud, too self-absorbed, and too disconnected from the divine forces that had once guided it. But despite Plato's detailed description of the fall of Atlantis, there are numerous questions that remain unanswered. For one, there is the problem of the location of Atlantis. Plato's writings suggest that the island was located beyond the Mediterranean in the Atlantic Ocean, but no such landmass has ever been found. Many have speculated that Atlantis could have been located in the Mediterranean itself, perhaps in places like the Greek island of Santorini or the coast of Spain. Others have suggested that Atlantis might have been located in the Caribbean, near the Bahamas, or even farther out into the Atlantic. Yet, despite centuries of exploration and countless theories, no definitive evidence has been found to support any of these claims. Another major issue is the lack of archaeological evidence. If Atlantis was as advanced as Plato described, surely there would be some trace of its existence. Ruins, artifacts, or even remnants of the city's architecture. Yet, despite the many expeditions to uncover the lost city, no such evidence has ever been discovered. Some have argued that the destruction of Atlantis was so complete that no traces were left behind. Others have suggested that the city might have been deliberately hidden, either by the Atlanteans themselves or by other ancient civilizations seeking to erase all memory of the city. But even with all the theories and speculation, the question remains, where is the proof? It is also important to consider the context in which Plato wrote his account of Atlantis. Plato's writings were not intended to be a historical record, but rather a philosophical allegory. Many scholars argue that Plato's depiction of Atlantis was not meant to be taken literally, but was instead a story meant to convey moral lessons. In Timaeus and Critias, Plato uses the tale of Atlantis to explore themes of hubris, moral decay, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. The story of Atlantis, in this view, is a cautionary tale, a warning against the dangers of pride and the inevitable downfall that comes with it. In this light, the story of Atlantis is less about a real city and more about the timeless lessons that it represents. Despite these contradictions and uncertainties, the myth of Atlantis has endured. It has captured the imagination of generations of people, from ancient philosophers to modern-day explorers. The idea that a powerful and advanced civilization once existed, only to be lost to time, continues to fascinate and inspire. For centuries, people have searched for Atlantis, driven by the belief that its secrets hold the key to unlocking ancient knowledge and understanding. The allure of Atlantis lies not only in the mystery of its disappearance, but also in the possibility that its story holds truths about the nature of human civilization, the rise and fall of societies, and the consequences of our own actions. It is precisely because of these unanswered questions and contradictions that Atlantis remains so captivating. The absence of concrete evidence only adds to the intrigue, creating a sense of mystery and wonder that refuses to fade. The myth of Atlantis, in all its variations, speaks to a fundamental human desire for discovery and understanding, for the search for lost knowledge and hidden truths. In this sense, Atlantis is more than just a city. It is a symbol, a representation of our longing to uncover the mysteries of the past and to understand the forces that shape our world. As we continue to explore the story of Atlantis, we are confronted with not only the question of its existence, but also the deeper, more existential questions it raises. What happened to this great civilization? What can we learn from its rise and fall? And perhaps most importantly, what does the story of Atlantis tell us about our own civilization? In a world that seems increasingly divided and disconnected, the myth of Atlantis serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between human achievement and moral responsibility. It asks us to consider how we, too, might fall prey to the same temptations that led to the downfall of Atlantis. And as we look to the future, the legend of Atlantis challenges us to reflect on the choices we make today and the legacy we will leave behind for future generations. The story of Atlantis, whether fact or myth, is a mirror held up to humanity. It reflects both our potential and our flaws, our capacity for greatness, and our vulnerability to self-destruction. It is a tale that continues to resonate, inspiring both wonder and caution as we search for the answers to the mysteries of our past. The story of Atlantis, as it has come down to us through the ages, is largely built upon the writings of the philosopher Plato. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, he paints a vivid picture of a civilization so advanced that it seemed almost otherworldly. According to Plato, Atlantis was a vast island, home to a great and powerful people who thrived long before the rise of ancient Greece. The island, he tells us, was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a place of incredible wealth and technological marvels, where the people enjoyed a life of ease, harmony, and plenty. The city was described as being larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, a sprawling metropolis filled with beautiful temples, majestic buildings, and a complex system of canals that kept the island's cities interconnected. It was a utopia, a shining beacon of human achievement, where peace and prosperity ruled, and the people were governed by wise and just leaders. At the heart of this great civilization lay the capital city, Atlantis itself, an extraordinary urban center built upon a series of concentric rings of land and water. The city was surrounded by enormous walls, adorned with gleaming metals, such as orichalcum, a mythical substance described by Plato as being more precious than gold. The people of Atlantis, according to Plato, had mastered the art of engineering, creating vast infrastructure that stretched across the island. They harnessed the power of nature to build magnificent structures and manage their environment, creating a society where wealth and knowledge flowed as freely as the waters that surrounded their city. But Atlantis was not just a place of material wealth. It was also a center of spiritual power. The gods themselves were said to have played a direct role in the creation of Atlantis, bestowing upon the island a unique and sacred connection to the divine. According to Plato, the founder of Atlantis was the god Poseidon, who fathered the first rulers of the city. Poseidon's love for the mortal woman Cleito and their subsequent children was said to be the origin of the Atlantean royal line. The rulers of Atlantis were divinely appointed, and their civilization was thought to be a reflection of the harmony between the gods and the earth. The city was a sacred space, a place where the divine and the human came together in a perfect balance. For a time, this society flourished, with its people enjoying the fruits of their labor and living in peace and prosperity. However, as Plato's tale unfolds, a darker side of Atlantis begins to emerge. Over time, the people of Atlantis became increasingly corrupt. The once virtuous rulers began to succumb to their own desires for power, wealth, and control. Their society, which had been built upon harmony and spiritual principles, began to fracture. Greed and hubris took root among the leaders, and they began to expand their empire, conquering neighboring lands and subjugating other civilizations. The mighty Atlanteans, who had once been revered for their wisdom and ingenuity, became consumed by their own arrogance, forgetting the balance that had allowed their civilization to thrive. Plato tells us that this moral decay was noticed by the gods. In his work, the gods play a crucial role in the fate of Atlantis. The gods, in their wisdom, saw that Atlantis had fallen into a state of imbalance, and as a result, they decided to punish the Atlanteans. The destruction of Atlantis is described as a divine retribution, a cataclysmic event that would wipe the island off the map in a single day and night. Plato writes that the entire island of Atlantis was submerged beneath the sea, its once great cities and sprawling landscapes disappearing into the depths of the ocean. This, Plato suggests, was the end of Atlantis, the fall of a civilization that had grown too proud, too self-absorbed, and too disconnected from the divine forces that had once guided it. But despite Plato's detailed description of the fall of Atlantis, there are numerous questions that remain unanswered. For one, there's the problem of the location of Atlantis. Plato's writings suggest that the island was located beyond the Mediterranean in the Atlantic Ocean, but no such landmass has ever been found. Many have speculated that Atlantis could have been located in the Mediterranean itself, perhaps in places like the Greek island of Santorini or the coast of Spain. Others have suggested that Atlantis might have been located in the Caribbean, near the Bahamas, or even farther out into the Atlantic. Yet, despite centuries of exploration and countless theories, no definitive evidence has been found to support any of these claims. Another major issue is the lack of archaeological evidence. If Atlantis was as advanced as Plato described, surely there would be some trace of its existence. Ruins, artifacts, or even remnants of the city's architecture. Yet, despite the many expeditions to uncover the lost city, no such evidence has ever been discovered. Some have argued that the destruction of Atlantis was so complete that no traces were left behind. Others have suggested that the city might have been deliberately hidden, either by the Atlanteans themselves or by other ancient civilizations seeking to erase all memory of the city. But even with all the theories and speculation, the question remains, where is the proof? It is also important to consider the context in which Plato wrote his account of Atlantis. Plato's writings were not intended to be a historical record, but rather a philosophical allegory. Many scholars argue that Plato's depiction of Atlantis was not meant to be taken literally, but was instead a story meant to convey moral lessons. In Timaeus and Critias, Plato uses the tale of Atlantis to explore themes of hubris, moral decay, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. The story of Atlantis, in this view, is a cautionary tale, a warning against the dangers of pride and the inevitable downfall that comes with it. In this light, the story of Atlantis is less about a real city and more about the timeless lessons that it represents. Despite these contradictions and uncertainties, the myth of Atlantis has endured. It has captured the imagination of generations of people, from ancient philosophers to modern-day explorers. The idea that a powerful and advanced civilization once existed, only to be lost to time, continues to fascinate and inspire. For centuries, people have searched for Atlantis, driven by the belief that its secrets hold the key to unlocking ancient knowledge and understanding. The allure of Atlantis lies not only in the mystery of its disappearance, but also in the possibility that its story holds truths about the nature of human civilization, the rise and fall of societies, and the consequences of our own actions. It is precisely because of these unanswered questions and contradictions that Atlantis remains so captivating. The absence of concrete evidence only adds to the intrigue, creating a sense of mystery and wonder that refuses to fade. The myth of Atlantis, in all its variations, speaks to a fundamental human desire for discovery and understanding, for the search for lost knowledge and hidden truths. In this sense, Atlantis is more than just a city. It is a symbol, a representation of our longing to uncover the mysteries of the past and to understand the forces that shape our world. As we continue to explore the story of Atlantis, we are confronted with not only the question of its existence, but also the deeper, more existential questions it raises. What happened to this great civilization? What can we learn from its rise and fall? And perhaps most importantly, what does the story of Atlantis tell us about our own civilization? In a world that seems increasingly divided and disconnected, the myth of Atlantis serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between human achievement and moral responsibility. It asks us to consider how we, too, might fall prey to the same temptations that led to the downfall of Atlantis. And as we look to the future, the legend of Atlantis challenges us to reflect on the choices we make today and the legacy we will leave behind for future generations. The story of Atlantis, whether fact or myth, is a mirror held up to humanity. It reflects both our potential and our flaws, our capacity for greatness, and our vulnerability to self-destruction. It is a tale that continues to resonate, inspiring both wonder and caution as we search for the answers to the mysteries of our past. As we consider the myth of Atlantis, we are left with an undeniable gap in history, a blank space in the narrative of human civilization where such a great and advanced city should be. While the story of Atlantis has captivated the imaginations of countless generations, the absence of any physical evidence raises a significant question. How could such a monumental civilization vanish without a trace? This gap is not just a small omission. It is a void that stretches across time, a missing piece of history that has prompted centuries of speculation, exploration, and curiosity. The disappearance of Atlantis, as Plato described it, is a striking and troubling thought. How could a whole city, an entire civilization, simply disappear beneath the waves in a single, catastrophic event? Some may argue that the loss of Atlantis is merely a legend, a fantastical tale spun by an ancient philosopher to convey a moral lesson about the dangers of pride and hubris. Yet, the persistent nature of this myth, its deep embedding in cultural history, suggests that there is something more at play here, something that transcends a simple allegory. For centuries, thinkers, archaeologists, and adventurers have sought to fill in this gap, to find some trace, no matter how faint, of Atlantis. They have scoured the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, the Caribbean, and even the sands of Egypt, looking for the remnants of what could be the greatest lost civilization in history. But time and again, their searches have returned empty-handed. No ruins, no artifacts, no structures or inscriptions have been found that can definitively be linked to Atlantis. The question then arises, why has no evidence been uncovered? Could the answer lie in the very nature of the disappearance itself? One theory that has been proposed is that Atlantis was, in fact, destroyed in a cataclysmic event so powerful that all traces of its existence were obliterated. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. These are natural forces that have the power to reshape entire landscapes, to swallow cities whole, and to erase civilizations from the face of the earth. If Atlantis was located in the region Plato described, beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic, it is not hard to imagine that it could have been vulnerable to such catastrophic forces. The idea of Atlantis sinking beneath the sea in a single day and night is, in many ways, consistent with the kinds of natural disasters that have occurred throughout history. The eruption of the Minoan volcano on the island of Thera, for example, triggered a series of tsunamis that devastated the surrounding region, with evidence suggesting that entire coastal cities were swallowed by the waves. Could something similar have happened to Atlantis? While this theory seems plausible, it also raises further questions. If such a disaster did occur, why have no remnants of the city been found? Could the island have been completely submerged, leaving no trace behind? Some proponents of this theory argue that the location of Atlantis could have been in an area that is now beneath the ocean, unreachable by modern technology. The shifting of tectonic plates, rising sea levels, or other geological changes could have buried the remnants of Atlantis deep beneath the sea. Yet, even with today's advanced sonar technology and underwater exploration techniques, no definitive evidence has been found to suggest that Atlantis lies beneath the waves. This leaves us in a perplexing position, caught between the stories passed down through the centuries and the lack of concrete proof. Another possibility is that Atlantis was deliberately hidden, either by the Atlanteans themselves or by other ancient civilizations. The idea that Atlantis could have been intentionally erased from history is an unsettling thought, but one that has garnered some attention among historians and theorists. What if the knowledge and power of Atlantis were so advanced that it posed a threat to other ancient societies? What if the fall of Atlantis was not the result of natural forces, but rather the result of a deliberate cover-up, a suppression of its existence by those who feared its potential? Some have suggested that the story of Atlantis may have been deliberately erased by later civilizations in order to prevent the knowledge of its advanced technologies, philosophies, and spiritual practices from falling into the wrong hands. This theory introduces a new layer of mystery and intrigue, as it suggests that Atlantis' disappearance may not have been a simple accident or natural disaster, but rather the result of a larger, more sinister plot. Could powerful forces, perhaps from ancient Egypt, Greece, or even other civilizations that existed in the distant past, have actively worked to hide the truth about Atlantis? If so, why would they do so? Was Atlantis a threat to the status quo, a civilization too powerful, too enlightened, or too disruptive to be allowed to exist? These are questions that have yet to be answered. But the notion that the loss of Atlantis was part of a deliberate effort to suppress its knowledge adds an element of political intrigue to the mystery. As we ponder these theories, we must also confront the possibility that Atlantis was never a real, physical city at all, but rather a symbolic construct. Could it be that Plato's description of Atlantis was not meant to be taken literally, but rather as an allegory for the rise and fall of human civilizations? Plato was a philosopher, after all, and his works often contain deeper meanings and moral lessons. In this view, Atlantis represents the inevitable decline of any great civilization, one that rises to power, achieves greatness, but ultimately succumbs to corruption and moral decay. The sinking of Atlantis, then, is not a literal event, but a metaphor for the collapse of societies that lose their way. This interpretation of Atlantis as a moral tale fits well with the themes of Plato's other works. Throughout his philosophy, he warned against the dangers of pride, greed, and the pursuit of power at the expense of virtue. In the Republic, he outlines his vision of a just society, one that is grounded in wisdom, moderation, and harmony. The story of Atlantis, in this sense, could be seen as a warning to future generations, urging them to avoid the same mistakes that led to the downfall of the great civilization. If Atlantis is merely a symbolic story, then its disappearance is not a matter of geography, but of human nature. However, even if we accept this interpretation, the absence of physical evidence still leaves us with a nagging question. If Atlantis was merely an allegory, why has the story endured for thousands of years? Why has it captured the imagination of so many, from ancient philosophers to modern-day explorers? The answer may lie in the timeless appeal of the mystery itself. The idea that a great civilization once existed, one that surpassed all others in knowledge and power, and then vanished without a trace, speaks to something deep within the human psyche. It taps into our fascination with the unknown, our desire to uncover hidden truths, and our longing to understand the forces that shape our world. Perhaps the true nature of Atlantis is not meant to be discovered through archaeological digs or scientific expeditions. Perhaps it is a mystery that cannot be solved by the logic of modern scholarship, but instead resides in the realm of the imagination and the spirit. Atlantis, in this sense, represents more than just a lost city. It represents a symbol of humanity's eternal quest for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It is a reminder that there are still things beyond our comprehension, mysteries that defy explanation and forces that lie beyond our control. As we continue to search for Atlantis, we are not simply looking for the ruins of an ancient city, but for something deeper, a sense of wonder, a spark of curiosity, and the belief that there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered in the world. And perhaps that, in the end, is the greatest mystery of all, the fact that the search for Atlantis, in all its mystery and ambiguity, continues to captivate and inspire us, generation after generation. As we continue to explore the enigma of Atlantis, it becomes clear that the search for answers has led to a multitude of theories, each attempting to piece together the scattered fragments of history, myth, and speculation. These theories span the spectrum from the purely scientific to the wildly imaginative, and each offers a unique lens through which we can attempt to understand the lost city. Some of the most compelling of these theories propose that Atlantis may not have simply been an isolated civilization, but rather a focal point in a much larger and more complex network of ancient cultures, possibly even spanning across continents. This raises an intriguing question. Could Atlantis have been part of an ancient global civilization, one that possessed a level of knowledge and technology far beyond what we attribute to the ancient world? The idea that Atlantis was not an isolated phenomenon, but rather part of a wider global network, is supported by various ancient myths and legends that share striking similarities. Across different cultures, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, there are tales of a great civilization that existed long before recorded history, a civilization that was either destroyed by catastrophic events or hidden from the world. These shared myths have led some scholars and theorists to suggest that Atlantis could have been the epicenter of this global culture, a place where advanced knowledge, whether in the fields of architecture, astronomy, mathematics, or spiritual practice, was concentrated and passed on to other ancient societies. According to this theory, Atlantis was not just a city, but a beacon of wisdom and enlightenment, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it was in harmony with the forces of nature and the divine. One of the most tantalizing aspects of this theory is the idea that the knowledge of Atlantis could have been spread across the globe, influencing the development of ancient civilizations. This is not just a fanciful notion. There are certain parallels between the myth of Atlantis and the early cultures that arose in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and even South America. For instance, the ancient Egyptians are often associated with the knowledge of astronomy and geometry, disciplines that Plato's Atlantis was said to have mastered. Similarly, the Mayan civilization, known for its advanced understanding of the stars and complex calendar systems, has often been linked to the idea of lost ancient knowledge. Some theorists argue that these civilizations, among others, could have been the heirs of the wisdom passed down from the Atlanteans, inheriting their knowledge after the fall of the great city. This connection between Atlantis and other ancient cultures is further supported by the similarities in their architectural achievements. The grand structures described by Plato in Atlantis, including towering temples and elaborate palaces, bear a striking resemblance to the monumental buildings and pyramids of Egypt, Mesoamerica, and even the mysterious megalithic sites of Europe, such as Stonehenge. Could it be that these architectural wonders were the result of knowledge passed down from the Atlanteans? Was there an ancient blueprint for these structures, a set of principles that guided the construction of such grand edifices, and was this knowledge somehow lost to time after the fall of Atlantis? The idea that there could have been a unified architectural and engineering tradition that spanned across the ancient world is a captivating one, and it challenges the conventional understanding of how ancient civilizations developed their technologies. Beyond architecture and engineering, the idea of Atlantis as a center of advanced spiritual and philosophical thought also resonates across many cultures. Plato's descriptions of the spiritual harmony of the Atlanteans, their connection to the divine, and their moral decline over time offer a compelling narrative about the rise and fall of civilizations. The spiritual dimensions of Atlantis have long been a source of fascination for scholars and mystics alike. Could the teachings and wisdom of Atlantis have influenced the development of ancient religious and philosophical systems? Some have speculated that the esoteric knowledge of Atlantis was passed on to later societies, contributing to the rise of the great religious and philosophical movements of antiquity, including the mystery schools of Egypt, the philosophical traditions of Greece, and the spiritual practices of the Far East. One of the most enduring mysteries surrounding Atlantis is its supposed location. Plato's accounts place the island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which has been traditionally interpreted as the Strait of Gibraltar, suggesting that Atlantis lay in the Atlantic Ocean. However, as we know, no island matching Plato's description has ever been found in this area. This has led to countless theories about where Atlantis could have been located. Some have suggested that the island was situated in the Mediterranean, perhaps near the island of Santorini, which was devastated by a volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. The eruption of Thera is one of the most plausible candidates for the event that could have destroyed Atlantis, and there are similarities between the volcanic island and Plato's description of the island city. Others have argued that Atlantis may have been located in the Caribbean, pointing to the submerged structures near the Bahamas and the mysterious Bimini Road, which some claim are remnants of the lost city. Yet another theory suggests that Atlantis may have been located in Antarctica, an idea that has gained traction in recent years. According to this theory, the Earth's crust shifted dramatically thousands of years ago, causing the southern continents to move and leaving Atlantis submerged beneath the ice. This theory is bolstered by the strange anomalies in Antarctica's landscape, including the discovery of what appears to be a large pyramid-like structure beneath the ice. While there is no definitive evidence to support the idea that Atlantis was located in Antarctica, the possibility adds another layer of intrigue to the mystery. Could it be that the ancient civilization of Atlantis was hidden beneath the ice, waiting to be discovered by future explorers? Despite the many theories and hypotheses, the absence of solid evidence has led some to question whether Atlantis ever truly existed at all. Could the story of Atlantis be purely a myth, a creation of Plato's imagination? There are those who argue that Plato's account was not meant to be taken literally, but rather as a moral allegory about the dangers of pride and the consequences of human excess. In this view, Atlantis represents a cautionary tale about the inevitable fall of civilizations that lose their moral compass and become consumed by greed and corruption. According to this interpretation, the story of Atlantis is less about a specific city and more about the universal cycle of rise and fall that all civilizations experience. Yet, even as we entertain the possibility that Atlantis was a metaphor, it is impossible to ignore the many tantalizing parallels between the myth and the real-world ancient civilizations that came after it. The enduring power of the Atlantis legend lies not only in the mystery of its origins, but also in its ability to inspire and intrigue. Even in the absence of concrete evidence, the myth continues to capture the imagination of people all over the world. It is a symbol of lost knowledge, of a civilization that reached great heights and then vanished, leaving behind only fragments of its existence. The search for Atlantis is more than just an intellectual exercise. It is a quest for something deeper, something that transcends time and space. It is a search for knowledge, for understanding, and for the possibility that there may have been a time when humanity was capable of far more than we can imagine. Whether or not Atlantis was a real place, the ideas it represents continue to resonate with us today. The legend serves as a reminder that there is always more to discover, that there are mysteries waiting to be unraveled, and that the past may hold secrets that can change our understanding of who we are and where we come from. In the end, the search for Atlantis is not just about uncovering the truth of an ancient civilization. It is about exploring the boundaries of human knowledge and imagination. It is about embracing the unknown and daring to ask questions that challenge our understanding of history, of civilization, and of the forces that shape our world. Atlantis may have been lost to the depths of the ocean, but its story continues to inspire us, to remind us of the greatness that humanity is capable of and the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. As long as the echoes of Atlantis continue to resonate, the search for answers will persist, driving us forward into the depths of history, where the truth may be waiting to be discovered. The allure of Atlantis is undeniable, and yet, as we dive deeper into its mystery, we find ourselves confronted not just by the absence of evidence, but by the presence of countless contradictions and unanswered questions that only serve to intensify the fascination. As the search for Atlantis continues, we are drawn into a paradox. The more we seek the truth, the more elusive it becomes. What if the key to understanding Atlantis isn't found in the search for a tangible city or lost artifacts, but rather in the way the story has endured, passed down through generations, woven into the fabric of human culture and collective memory? The story of Atlantis is not merely a historical enigma. It is a cultural touchstone, a mirror reflecting humanity's ongoing quest for meaning, purpose, and connection to the past. As we continue to unravel the threads of this ancient myth, one undeniable fact emerges. Atlantis has become a symbol, not just of a lost civilization, but of the enduring human desire for enlightenment and transformation. Whether or not Atlantis ever existed as a physical place, the idea of Atlantis has shaped our understanding of what it means to be human. The myth of a perfect civilization that fell from grace serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of greatness, the fleeting nature of power, and the ever-present threat of moral decay. In many ways, Atlantis is a cautionary tale, one that warns us not to become too enamored with our own success, not to allow our civilization to become so disconnected from the wisdom of the past that we forget the lessons of humility and balance. But beyond the cautionary aspect of the tale, there is something undeniably hopeful in the myth of Atlantis. For in its loss, Atlantis represents not just destruction, but also the possibility of rebirth. The idea that Atlantis could be rediscovered, that its wisdom could be revived, is a theme that has captured the imaginations of adventurers, thinkers, and spiritual seekers throughout history. The idea that something so advanced, so enlightened, could have existed and been lost to time fuels a belief in the possibility of rediscovery, of the human capacity for greatness, and of the potential to rise above the challenges that currently define our world. Atlantis, in this sense, becomes a symbol of what could be, a vision of a future where humanity reaches its highest potential, if only we can learn from the mistakes of the past. But why does the story of Atlantis resonate so deeply with us? Why has it endured for so long, even as the physical evidence of its existence continues to elude us? Perhaps the answer lies in the power of the myth itself, in the way it taps into deep, universal themes that transcend time and culture. Atlantis, as a story, addresses fundamental questions about human nature, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the relationship between humanity and the natural world. It asks us to consider the consequences of our actions, to reflect on the balance between progress and sustainability, and to question the ethics of power and ambition. It speaks to our collective fears of loss and destruction, but also to our dreams of transcendence, of achieving something greater than ourselves. Throughout history, Atlantis has been more than just a city. It has been a lens through which we view our own civilization, with all its strengths and flaws. The rise of Atlantis represents the potential for human achievement, for the creation of societies that are harmonious, just, and enlightened. The fall of Atlantis, on the other hand, symbolizes the dangers of overreaching, of losing sight of the principles that sustain a society and lead it toward true greatness. In this sense, the story of Atlantis is not just about a single lost civilization. It is about the cyclical nature of history itself, the inevitable rise and fall of empires, and the lessons we must learn in order to break free from this cycle. The myth of Atlantis has also played a significant role in shaping spiritual and esoteric traditions. Over the centuries, many occult and mystical groups have adopted the story of Atlantis as a symbol of lost knowledge, of ancient wisdom that can lead to enlightenment. The idea that the Atlanteans possessed advanced technologies and spiritual practices, perhaps even tapping into cosmic energies or otherworldly forces, has inspired a range of spiritual movements, from theosophy to New Age philosophy. These movements often frame Atlantis as a kind of utopian society, one that held the secrets to human potential, a society whose downfall was the result of its failure to maintain balance between the spiritual and material worlds. The mystery of Atlantis, then, becomes a metaphor for our own spiritual journey, an invitation to seek higher truths, to strive for inner harmony, and to overcome the forces of materialism and ego. It is interesting to note that the idea of a lost civilization possessing advanced knowledge is not unique to the story of Atlantis. Many ancient myths from around the world speak of great cultures that were destroyed by a cataclysmic event, leaving behind only fragments of their wisdom. The story of the lost city of Mu, for example, which is said to have existed in the Pacific Ocean, shares many similarities with the myth of Atlantis. Likewise, the myth of Lemuria, a sunken continent in the Indian or Pacific Oceans, has been proposed as another lost civilization with advanced spiritual and technological knowledge. These myths, much like Atlantis, suggest that there may have been a time in human history when we were connected to higher realms of knowledge, a time when human potential was more fully realized. Yet, as with Atlantis, the truth of these civilizations remains shrouded in mystery, leaving us to wonder whether they were real or merely symbolic representations of something deeper within our collective consciousness. In the modern era, the myth of Atlantis has found new life in popular culture, from literature and films to video games and television shows. These modern interpretations often depict Atlantis as a symbol of lost wisdom or a mysterious source of power, further cementing its place in the cultural imagination. Atlantis is no longer just a story from the distant past. It has become a timeless archetype, a narrative that speaks to our ongoing quest for knowledge, power, and self-understanding. In this way, the myth of Atlantis has evolved, adapting to the needs and desires of each generation, yet always returning to the same central themes: the tension between material and spiritual pursuits, the consequences of unchecked ambition, and the hope for redemption and renewal. It is perhaps this adaptability, this ability to resonate with so many different people across cultures and time periods, that has ensured the survival of the Atlantis myth. Whether as a literal city, a metaphor for human potential, or a symbol of lost wisdom, Atlantis continues to captivate us because it speaks to something deep within the human psyche. It represents both our highest aspirations and our greatest fears, our desire for transcendence and our fear of destruction. And it is precisely this duality that makes the story of Atlantis so powerful, because in its rise and fall, we see a reflection of ourselves. As we stand on the edge of history, gazing into the abyss where Atlantis once stood, we are reminded of the fragility of our own civilization. Atlantis may be lost, but its story endures, urging us to reflect on our choices, to examine the balance between progress and wisdom, and to consider the legacy we will leave behind. The search for Atlantis is not just a quest for a forgotten city. It is a quest for meaning, for understanding, and for the possibility of something greater than ourselves. As we continue to ask the questions, we are reminded that the answers may not always lie in the past. Instead, they may be waiting for us in the future, in the untapped potential of humanity, and in the wisdom that can only be gained through reflection, humility, and the willingness to learn from both our successes and our failures. Atlantis, whether it ever existed as a physical place or not, serves as a timeless reminder of the power of myth to shape our collective consciousness. It is a story that transcends time, a story that continues to inspire, challenge, and intrigue us, urging us to seek the knowledge that lies hidden within ourselves and the world around us. And perhaps, in the end, it is this search, the search for wisdom, for understanding, and for a deeper connection to the mysteries of the universe, that is the true legacy of Atlantis. As the myth of Atlantis continues to captivate the minds of countless individuals, the question of what exactly happened to this mysterious civilization remains one of the most enduring puzzles in human history. The tantalizing image of an advanced society, with knowledge and technology far beyond its time, swallowed by the sea, has given rise to a host of theories, each more speculative than the last. The search for Atlantis has evolved from a quest for historical truth into something far more profound, a search for meaning, understanding, and a deeper connection to the universe itself. In this ongoing search, we have been forced to ask ourselves some difficult questions. If Atlantis was real, where did it go? And if it was merely a myth, what truths does the story hold for us today? One of the most widely accepted theories about the disappearance of Atlantis is that the island was destroyed by a massive natural disaster, an event so powerful that it wiped out the entire civilization in a single, catastrophic blow. This theory draws on Plato's description of the sinking of Atlantis, where he writes that the island was submerged beneath the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune. The concept of a civilization being wiped out by a sudden, violent event is not entirely foreign to history. Throughout the ages, many civilizations have fallen due to earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters. Some have suggested that the story of Atlantis might be a mythological account of such an event, with Plato's descriptions serving as a metaphor for the dangers of human hubris and moral decline. The most commonly proposed natural disaster that could have destroyed Atlantis is a massive earthquake or volcanic eruption. One of the strongest candidates for such an event is the eruption of the Minoan volcano on the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, around 1600 BCE. The eruption was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, and its impact on the surrounding region was catastrophic. Archaeological evidence shows that the eruption led to massive tsunamis, which devastated the nearby island of Crete and caused widespread destruction throughout the Aegean. Could this eruption have been the real-life inspiration for the destruction of Atlantis? Some scholars believe that the story of Atlantis may be a mythological retelling of the catastrophic events that followed the eruption of Thera. In this view, the Minoan civilization, which was one of the most advanced of its time, could have been a true Atlantis, and the story of its fall was passed down through generations as a cautionary tale. However, the problem with this theory is that the Minoans, while a sophisticated civilization, do not seem to fit the description of Atlantis as described by Plato. The Minoans were not located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, nor did they possess the level of technological or spiritual advancement that Plato attributes to Atlantis. Furthermore, the Minoan civilization did not disappear entirely after the eruption. Instead, it experienced a gradual decline over time. This leaves us with the question, if the Minoans were not Atlantis, then what happened to the civilization Plato described? Another theory that has gained traction in recent years is the idea that Atlantis was located somewhere in the Caribbean, possibly near the Bahamas or Cuba. This theory draws on the idea that the Caribbean region could have once been home to an advanced civilization that was destroyed by a massive cataclysmic event. Some proponents of this theory point to underwater structures like the Bimini Road, which is a submerged formation of stone blocks found near the Bahamas, as potential evidence of Atlantis' existence. While mainstream archaeologists dismiss the Bimini Road as a natural formation, others argue that it could be the remains of a man-made structure, perhaps part of the lost city of Atlantis. The Caribbean theory also suggests that the destruction of Atlantis could have been caused by a massive earthquake or tsunami, similar to what happened in the Mediterranean after the eruption of Thera. Yet, despite these intriguing possibilities, no definitive evidence has ever been found to support the theory that Atlantis existed in the Caribbean. The Bimini Road, while a curious formation, has been shown to be a natural feature, and no other substantial evidence of an advanced civilization has been uncovered in the area. This has led many scholars to question whether the Caribbean is the right location for Atlantis, or if the city's true location lies elsewhere, perhaps in a region that has long since been lost to the ravages of time and nature. Some have suggested that Atlantis could have been located in Antarctica, a theory that has become more popular in recent years. The idea is that Atlantis was once located in a temperate climate, but that due to shifts in the Earth's crust, the continent of Antarctica was moved to its current icy position, burying the remains of Atlantis beneath layers of ice. Proponents of this theory point to strange geological formations in Antarctica, such as what some claim to be a pyramid-like structure and evidence of ancient lake beds, as proof that the continent could once have been home to a civilization far older than previously thought. While there is no solid evidence to support this claim, the idea of a sunken Atlantis beneath the ice of Antarctica has captivated the imagination of many, adding yet another layer to the ongoing mystery. The theory that Atlantis was located in Antarctica also raises questions about the possibility of ancient global civilizations. If Atlantis was indeed a highly advanced civilization, could it have been part of a global network of ancient cultures spanning continents and connecting distant lands? Could the people of Atlantis have been capable of maritime travel, exploring and trading with other ancient civilizations across vast distances? This idea challenges our conventional understanding of the ancient world, suggesting that human beings may have had the knowledge and capability to create advanced societies long before the rise of the civilizations we are familiar with today. But even as we consider these theories and possibilities, we must also acknowledge the limitations of our understanding. Atlantis, like many ancient myths, exists at the intersection of history and legend, and no amount of speculation or exploration will change the fact that the physical evidence remains elusive. Despite centuries of searching, we have yet to find any conclusive proof that Atlantis ever existed as a real place. Some scholars argue that the story of Atlantis is merely a myth, a philosophical allegory created by Plato to illustrate the dangers of hubris and the consequences of moral decay. In this view, Atlantis is not a real city, but rather a symbol, a cautionary tale that reflects the rise and fall of all civilizations, including our own. If Atlantis is indeed a myth, then what does its story tell us about ourselves? Perhaps the most significant lesson we can take from the tale of Atlantis is that civilizations, no matter how advanced or powerful they may seem, are always vulnerable to collapse. The fall of Atlantis, as described by Plato, is a metaphor for the dangers of becoming too complacent, too arrogant, and too disconnected from the natural world. It serves as a reminder that human beings must remain humble, mindful of the forces that shape our lives, and aware of the consequences of their actions. The story of Atlantis, then, is not just a tale of a lost civilization. It is a reflection of the challenges that all societies face, and a warning of the dangers that come with forgetting the values that keep a civilization grounded and sustainable. Moreover, the story of Atlantis invites us to think about the nature of memory and history itself. What are the stories we pass down through generations, and what do they say about us? The myth of Atlantis has endured for thousands of years, and in that time, it has taken on countless meanings, adapting to the cultural, philosophical, and spiritual needs of each era. It is a story that transcends time, a narrative that continues to captivate the human imagination because it speaks to something deeper, something universal about the human condition. The search for Atlantis, then, is not just a quest for a lost city. It is a quest for understanding, for meaning, and for connection to the mysteries of the past. In the end, the disappearance of Atlantis may remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Whether the city was real or merely a myth, its story will continue to live on, shaping our understanding of the past and inspiring future generations to search for the hidden truths that lie buried beneath the sands of time. The legend of Atlantis, with all its mystery, intrigue, and unanswered questions, is a testament to the power of myth and to the enduring human desire to explore the unknown, to uncover lost knowledge, and to learn from the lessons of history. It is a story that, like the ocean itself, remains vast, deep, and full of secrets waiting to be discovered. As we delve deeper into the myth of Atlantis, we must confront the fascinating possibility that the story itself holds not just a reflection of ancient civilization, but an entire archetype of human experience. It's not just a tale about a lost city beneath the sea. Rather, it encapsulates a deeper narrative, one that has played out countless times in history, both in our collective past and in the personal stories of individuals. In this sense, Atlantis becomes a symbol, not only of a society that ascended to great heights, but also of the inevitable fall that follows unchecked ambition and moral corruption. To consider Atlantis as a cautionary tale is to embrace its role as a mirror, reflecting our own desires, flaws, and potential for greatness. But as we look at this myth through the lens of human psychology and history, it opens up more complex layers of understanding. Atlantis might not be a singular lost city, but a metaphor that transcends geography, era, and culture, speaking to the rise and fall of civilizations, of individuals, and of all human aspirations. In its earliest form, Atlantis was not simply a place or a lost city. It was a story of hubris and the tragic consequences of human arrogance. According to Plato's accounts, Atlantis was a civilization that had once existed in harmony with the natural world, thriving in wealth, wisdom, and beauty. But the Atlanteans, in their pursuit of power and dominance, began to lose their connection to their higher virtues. Over time, their society became consumed by materialism and greed. They sought to conquer and dominate the world around them, believing their power to be limitless, until the gods, angered by their moral decline, decided to punish them. In a single day, Atlantis was submerged beneath the sea, swallowed by the very forces it had once attempted to control. This narrative isn't just about a lost city. It's about the forces that drive civilizations to greatness and, ultimately, to destruction. It's a story of pride, ambition, and the failure to maintain balance in the face of power. But why does this story continue to resonate so deeply with us, thousands of years after it was first told? Could it be that the tale of Atlantis reflects something universal about the human experience, about the fragility of success and the consequences of losing sight of what truly matters? It's not difficult to draw parallels between the downfall of Atlantis and the rise and fall of civilizations throughout history. From the great empires of Rome and Egypt to the more modern declines of once dominant world powers, the cycle of human achievement and downfall seems to follow a tragic pattern. It's as if, throughout history, civilizations have been fated to repeat the mistakes of Atlantis, pursuing power, wealth, and dominance at the expense of wisdom, compassion, and balance. The myth of Atlantis, therefore, serves as a reminder, an eternal reflection on the dangers of unchecked ambition and the need to temper greatness with humility. In fact, the myth of Atlantis may serve a crucial psychological function for humanity. It speaks not just to the fate of entire civilizations, but also to the individual journey of self-discovery and growth. For many, Atlantis can be seen as a metaphor for the journey toward enlightenment, where the pursuit of wisdom and personal growth is often accompanied by the temptation to become overly proud or consumed by material desires. The story of Atlantis, then, becomes a metaphor for personal transformation, a warning against losing oneself in the pursuit of external goals at the expense of inner peace and wisdom. The parallels are striking. Just as Atlantis fell due to its lack of moral compass and balance, so too can individuals, when they ignore their higher selves, fall victim to their own destructive tendencies. In modern times, the concept of Atlantis has evolved far beyond its original depiction in Plato's writings. It has become a touchstone for various philosophical, spiritual, and even political ideologies. Some have embraced Atlantis as a utopian vision, a society where wisdom and technology harmonize with the natural world, a blueprint for a better future. Others have seen Atlantis as a warning, a symbol of the dangers of unchecked technological advancement or the consequences of environmental degradation. Still, others have turned to the myth of Atlantis for inspiration in their personal quest for enlightenment, viewing it as a spiritual metaphor for a lost age of human potential, one that they hope to reclaim. The diverse interpretations of Atlantis reflect the complex ways in which myths evolve over time, adapting to the shifting needs and desires of each generation. But even as we explore the psychological and philosophical dimensions of the Atlantis myth, the question remains, why has no definitive evidence of the lost city ever been found? The lack of physical proof has only fueled the myth's allure, as it transforms from a mere historical mystery into a symbolic and existential one. For many, the idea of Atlantis is a metaphor for the search itself, the search for meaning, truth, and wisdom. In this view, the absence of evidence is not a problem. It is an essential part of the story. The lack of tangible proof allows the myth to remain open, flexible, and endlessly interpretable. It invites us to ask questions that cannot be easily answered, forcing us to confront the limits of our knowledge and understanding. In the absence of proof, Atlantis becomes a mirror to our own beliefs, fears, and desires, an unknowable ideal that can never be fully grasped, but which continues to shape our imagination. The lack of evidence also speaks to a larger question about the nature of history itself. How much of what we know about the past is truly accurate, and how much of it is shaped by myth, legend, and cultural memory? The story of Atlantis has endured for thousands of years, passed down through generations in various forms, from ancient Greek writings to modern novels, films, and spiritual teachings. It has become part of our collective consciousness, woven into the fabric of our cultural identity. But this raises an important question. Is the story of Atlantis a reflection of a real event, or is it something more? Could it be that Atlantis is not a single, lost civilization, but rather a composite of many different myths and legends, drawn from various cultures and time periods? Perhaps Atlantis exists not as a physical place, but as a cultural and psychological archetype, a symbol of humanity's potential, its faults, and its ongoing struggle to balance progress with wisdom. Some scholars argue that Atlantis represents a collective memory of an ancient, global civilization, one that was far more advanced than any known culture from the ancient world. According to this theory, the myth of Atlantis could be a collective memory of an ancient civilization that spanned the globe, with knowledge and technology that were lost to history after a catastrophic event. The idea of a global civilization that existed long before recorded history has been a source of fascination for many, particularly in the fields of archaeology and alternative history. The belief in such a civilization suggests that the human story is far more complex than we currently understand, with knowledge and achievements that predate our earliest civilizations. This concept of a lost global civilization ties in with the idea of Atlantis as a symbol of our forgotten potential, a reminder that humanity may have once been capable of greatness far beyond what we can even imagine. This notion of Atlantis as a symbol of lost wisdom also intersects with various esoteric and spiritual traditions. Throughout history, many spiritual movements have adopted Atlantis as a symbol of the spiritual ascent, where individuals or societies could reach a higher state of consciousness and understanding. In these traditions, Atlantis is often depicted as a place where the forces of materialism and spirituality were in perfect harmony. The downfall of Atlantis is seen not just as a physical disaster, but as a spiritual one, a fall from a state of enlightenment into a world dominated by greed, power, and ignorance. In this view, the story of Atlantis is not just about the collapse of civilization, but about the collapse of the human soul, a cautionary tale of what happens when we lose our connection to the divine and the transcendent. Ultimately, the story of Atlantis raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge, power, and human potential. Whether or not Atlantis ever existed as a physical place, its story continues to resonate with us because it speaks to our deepest fears and desires. It is a story that embodies both the rise and fall of civilizations and the personal journey toward self-discovery and enlightenment. It serves as a reminder of the potential for greatness, but also the dangers of losing balance, of becoming consumed by our desires, and of neglecting the wisdom of the past. In this sense, the myth of Atlantis is not just about the loss of a city. It is about the eternal struggle for balance, for understanding, and for the preservation of wisdom in a world that is constantly changing. The search for Atlantis, whether literal or metaphorical, is a search for something greater, a deeper understanding of ourselves, our history, and our place in the universe. The myth of Atlantis, despite centuries of debate, has remained firmly entrenched in the collective consciousness of humanity, representing not just an ancient mystery, but an enduring symbol of humanity's deeper questions about itself, its potential, and its fate. While many have sought Atlantis in the hope of uncovering a lost city, hidden knowledge, or an ancient civilization with advanced technology, others have looked to it as something more, a metaphorical space, a lens through which we can reflect on our own time, our own civilization, and the very nature of human existence. In this light, the myth of Atlantis is not merely a relic of the past, but an ongoing conversation about the future, a future shaped by the choices we make today. What is it about the story of Atlantis that continues to intrigue us, centuries after Plato's initial account? The allure of this ancient city lies not just in its supposed location or the events that led to its disappearance, but in its connection to timeless themes: the rise and fall of civilizations, the balance between progress and wisdom, the consequences of moral decline, and the human capacity for both greatness and destruction. These themes are not confined to a distant past. They are as relevant today as they ever were, as modern society grapples with many of the same challenges that supposedly led to Atlantis' demise. The story of Atlantis, therefore, offers not just a glimpse into an ancient world, but a reflection on the world we live in now. It raises fundamental questions about what it means to be human, about the nature of civilization, and about the path we are walking as a species. The fall of Atlantis, as described by Plato, is a tale of pride, greed, and moral decline. The city, once blessed with prosperity and wisdom, gradually became consumed by ambition and excess. The Atlanteans, in their pursuit of power and dominance, lost sight of their higher ideals. The gods, angered by their arrogance, punished them, and the mighty city sank beneath the sea in a single day. This dramatic and catastrophic end serves as a powerful allegory, not just for the fall of an ancient civilization, but for the inevitable decline of any society that loses touch with its core values. It is a warning, a reminder that no matter how great a civilization may be, it is always vulnerable to the forces of hubris and moral decay. The story of Atlantis, then, serves as a timeless cautionary tale, one that continues to resonate as we witness the rise and fall of empires in the modern world. But the story of Atlantis is not just about destruction and downfall. It also holds within it a profound sense of loss and longing. The idea of a great civilization lost to the depths of the ocean speaks to something deeply human, a universal experience of yearning for something that has been lost, a dream of a better time, a better place, or a higher state of being. Atlantis, in this sense, becomes a symbol of what could have been, a vision of a society that, if it had survived, might have reached unimaginable heights of wisdom, peace, and enlightenment. It speaks to our desire for transcendence, for the possibility of a world where humanity lives in harmony with itself and with nature. This dream of Atlantis as a utopia, a society where all things are in balance, has captured the imagination of generations, fueling not just historical inquiry, but also spiritual and philosophical movements. The very concept of Atlantis holds within it a sense of potential, a potential for greatness that was lost but, in some ways, still lingers just beyond reach. In a world increasingly defined by technological progress and material pursuits, the myth of Atlantis serves as a poignant reminder of the need to balance the material and the spiritual, the external and the internal. The downfall of Atlantis, according to Plato, was not merely a result of natural disaster, but of a deeper, internal moral collapse. The Atlanteans, for all their technological advancements and prosperity, failed to maintain the inner balance necessary to sustain their civilization. Their focus shifted from wisdom, harmony, and respect for the divine to domination, conquest, and excess. In this sense, Atlantis is not just a city lost to the ocean. It is a symbol of what happens when society loses its connection to deeper values, to the wisdom of the heart, and to the forces that sustain life itself. It serves as a powerful metaphor for the dangers of prioritizing progress and achievement over spiritual growth, inner peace, and ecological harmony. In the modern era, as we face unprecedented global challenges, climate change, political instability, social fragmentation, and technological overreach, the lessons of Atlantis have never seemed more relevant. The warnings embedded in the myth of Atlantis about the fragility of civilizations and the consequences of unchecked ambition speak to the challenges of our own time. We are living in an age where human technology and influence have reached unprecedented levels. But with this power comes the potential for equally unprecedented consequences. Just as the Atlanteans pushed the boundaries of their power, so too do we, whether through the exploitation of natural resources, the acceleration of technological advancements, or the rise of political and economic systems that value wealth and power over sustainability and justice. The fall of Atlantis, therefore, serves as a stark reminder that no society, no matter how advanced or powerful, is immune to the forces of destruction, whether those forces come from the environment, from within, or from the collective decisions we make as a global society. Yet, despite the dark warning of Atlantis' fall, the myth also carries within it a glimmer of hope, a vision of what might have been, and a call to action for what could still be. While the city itself was lost to the ocean, its story continues to resonate, suggesting that there is something within us, something in our collective consciousness, that yearns for a society built on wisdom, compassion, and balance. Atlantis, as a symbol, represents not just the past, but the future, a future that is still within our reach, if only we are willing to learn from the mistakes of those who came before us. The dream of Atlantis, then, is not just about longing for a lost civilization, but about envisioning a better world, one where humanity has learned to live in harmony with the earth, with each other, and with the deeper truths of the universe. In exploring the myth of Atlantis, we are not just engaging with an ancient story. We are engaging with the fundamental questions of what it means to be human. What are we capable of, both for good and for ill? What kind of world do we want to create? And what will be the consequences of our choices? These are the questions that the story of Atlantis forces us to confront. It reminds us that the rise and fall of civilizations is not an abstract concept, but a process that continues to unfold in real time, right before our eyes. And it challenges us to think about the legacy we will leave behind, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. As we continue to explore the story of Atlantis, we may never uncover definitive evidence of its existence, but we can still find meaning in its myth. Atlantis may be lost, but its lessons are still with us. The story of its rise and fall offers us a framework for understanding our own time and the challenges we face. It calls on us to be mindful of our choices, to stay connected to the deeper values that sustain life, and to recognize that the fate of any civilization is ultimately in our hands. Atlantis, whether real or imagined, serves as a timeless reminder of the potential for both greatness and destruction that lies within every human society. Its story will continue to inspire, challenge, and provoke us, urging us to seek wisdom, balance, and a deeper connection to the world around us. In the end, the myth of Atlantis is not just about a lost city. It is about our own search for meaning, for truth, and for a more harmonious future. The legend of Atlantis, with all its rich layers of mystery, remains one of the most compelling and enduring myths of human history. For centuries, it has captivated the imaginations of historians, archaeologists, and seekers of the unknown, drawing them into a web of speculation, wonder, and endless pursuit. Yet, despite the fervent search for its lost city, its precise location remains a mystery, leading to the inevitable question: why does this myth endure so strongly in the face of such a lack of concrete evidence? The answer may lie in the symbolic weight Atlantis carries. Its very mystery, its inability to be definitively located or proven, has transformed it from a literal search for a lost city into something much more profound, a search for deeper truths about ourselves and the world we inhabit. Perhaps it is not the physical city that we are truly seeking, but rather the metaphysical and philosophical ideas embedded in the myth itself. Throughout the ages, Atlantis has functioned as a mirror for humanity, reflecting both our highest aspirations and our deepest fears. In the myth, Atlantis is not just a city. It is an ideal, a civilization that at its height embodied wisdom, prosperity, and balance. It was a place where technology and spirituality coexisted harmoniously, where society thrived without exploiting the natural world or one another. In many ways, the lost city represents a golden age, a utopian society that humanity has longed to reclaim ever since. The tragedy of Atlantis is not only in its fall, but in the awareness that such a society could exist, and yet it was lost, possibly forever. The destruction of Atlantis, submerged beneath the sea in a day and a night, symbolizes the fragility of perfection, the fleeting nature of greatness, and the danger of straying too far from the principles that support true wisdom and balance. It serves as a reminder that no matter how advanced or enlightened we become, we remain vulnerable to our own excesses, pride, and failure to maintain harmony with the world around us. But the significance of Atlantis stretches far beyond its depiction as a lost civilization. The myth carries deep philosophical weight, reflecting on the fundamental nature of human ambition, progress, and self-destruction. In this context, the story of Atlantis can be viewed as an allegory for the rise and fall of any society, and indeed, any individual. It speaks to the tension between material success and spiritual enlightenment, between the pursuit of external achievement and a nurturing of inner wisdom. At its core, Atlantis is not simply a lost city, but a metaphor for the human condition, our potential to create beauty, harmony, and wisdom, and our capacity to destroy it through ignorance, greed, and an obsession with power. The Atlanteans, as depicted by Plato, were once a society that lived in harmony with the divine, their cities full of splendor and their minds full of wisdom. However, as they grew in wealth and power, they began to lose sight of the principles that once guided them. The city's eventual downfall became a direct result of this moral decay, suggesting that no matter how advanced a civilization becomes, its true survival depends not just on technology or power, but on its ethical and spiritual grounding. This theme of moral decline, of a civilization forgetting its deeper purpose, resonates profoundly in the modern world. As we navigate a time of unprecedented technological advancement and global interconnectedness, the questions posed by the story of Atlantis, about the consequences of unchecked ambition, the ethics of power, and the need for balance, feel especially pertinent. In an age where rapid technological growth is often seen as the key to progress, it is easy to overlook the importance of wisdom and moral clarity. The myth of Atlantis challenges this perspective, reminding us that true progress does not lie in the accumulation of material wealth or the pursuit of technological dominance, but in the cultivation of virtues that honor the interconnectedness of all life. The fall of Atlantis, then, can be seen as a metaphor for the dangers of a society that loses sight of its ethical foundation, one that places more importance on power and conquest than on spiritual growth, sustainability, and balance with nature. The ongoing search for Atlantis, whether it be in the depths of the oceans, beneath the ice of Antarctica, or among the ruins of ancient civilizations, also reflects our collective yearning for something beyond the material world, a longing for deeper knowledge, understanding, and connection. The idea of a lost city filled with advanced technology, hidden wisdom, and spiritual enlightenment taps into our innate desire for transcendence and the search for answers to life's most profound questions. What if buried beneath the sands of time, there exists an ancient knowledge that holds the key to unlocking a higher level of human consciousness, one that could elevate society as a whole? It is this tantalizing possibility that continues to fuel the quest for Atlantis. The notion that the Atlanteans possessed knowledge that was far ahead of their time, potentially even tapping into hidden cosmic forces, speaks to the human desire for mastery over the unknown. But it is also, perhaps, a reflection of our own yearning for meaning in a world that often seems dominated by the mundane and the material. Yet, the myth of Atlantis remains elusive. Its very existence and the truth of its downfall is something we can never fully know. This mystery, this ambiguity, is part of what makes the legend so compelling. The lack of definitive proof allows the myth to endure, to evolve, and to adapt to the changing needs of each generation. Atlantis becomes more than a historical mystery. It becomes a canvas onto which we project our own fears, desires, and hopes. In this sense, the search for Atlantis is not just about uncovering a lost civilization, but about seeking to understand the deeper truths of the human experience, our potential for greatness, our tendency to fall, and our continual search for wisdom. The unanswered questions that surround Atlantis, the question of whether it was real, the question of how it fell, and the question of what it might have represented, are questions that have no easy answers. Yet, it is in the asking of these questions, and in the ongoing pursuit of answers, that we find meaning. The continued fascination with Atlantis also speaks to our broader relationship with the past and our understanding of history. How much of our past is truly known, and how much of it is obscured by time, myth, and legend? The story of Atlantis raises fundamental questions about the nature of history itself. What is remembered? What is forgotten? And why? What happens to the stories of civilizations that fall into ruin, their knowledge lost or destroyed, their cities forgotten? Atlantis stands as a symbol of both the triumphs and the tragedies of human history, a reminder that all civilizations are subject to the forces of time, decay, and collapse. It invites us to reflect on the fragility of our own civilization, to question what might be lost in the future, and to consider what we might be doing today to ensure that the wisdom of the past is not lost to the sands of time. For many, the story of Atlantis has also become a source of inspiration. It serves as a call to action, urging us to reconnect with the wisdom of ancient cultures, to reclaim a sense of balance and harmony that may have been lost in the rush of modern progress. Whether viewed as a literal city or as a metaphor for a more idealized state of being, Atlantis symbolizes the possibility of a better world, one where wisdom, compassion, and balance guide the course of human civilization. The dream of Atlantis, in this sense, is not about longing for a lost civilization, but about striving to build a more enlightened future, drawing on the lessons of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. It is a dream of a society that has learned from the mistakes of Atlantis, one that values wisdom over power, balance over excess, and spiritual growth over material success. As we continue to explore the myth of Atlantis, we must also recognize that its meaning is not static. It is a story that evolves, that changes with each retelling. For some, Atlantis represents the pinnacle of human achievement, a shining example of what we could become if we live in harmony with nature and with one another. For others, it represents a warning, a cautionary tale of what happens when societies lose sight of their higher purpose and become consumed by their own desires. But perhaps the most important lesson that the myth of Atlantis offers is the reminder that the story of humanity is still being written. We are still in the process of creating our own civilization, and it is up to us to decide whether we will heed the lessons of the past or repeat the same mistakes. The myth of Atlantis, then, is not just a story of the past. It is a story of the future, one that continues to unfold as we search for answers, as we strive for wisdom, and as we seek to build a world that reflects the highest potential of humanity. The myth of Atlantis, woven with threads of mystery and speculation, continues to captivate our imagination, not only because of its tantalizing narrative, but because it speaks to the very core of our human condition. The desire to uncover lost knowledge, the fascination with ancient civilizations, and the longing to transcend the limitations of the present have all played a role in keeping the legend of Atlantis alive across centuries. Yet, as we search for tangible evidence of Atlantis' existence, we must also ask ourselves whether the city ever truly existed in the way we imagine it. Could it be that the story of Atlantis is not merely a historical enigma, but a symbol, one that speaks to the universal human experience, our highest aspirations, and our deepest fears? For centuries, explorers, historians, and treasure hunters have scoured the globe, seeking the lost city of Atlantis. They have searched beneath the waves, in ancient ruins, and within the vast, uncharted corners of the earth, all in the hope of finding definitive proof of its existence. Yet, despite their best efforts, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to confirm that Atlantis was a real, physical city. The lack of such evidence, however, has not dampened the allure of the myth. On the contrary, it has only fueled the mystery, turning Atlantis into a symbol of something greater, something that transcends the realm of physical discovery. What if, instead of a literal city, Atlantis represents something deeper, a metaphor for the potential of human civilization, a vision of what could have been and what still might be?